Hello and welcome back to the Shmuseum. Now, as you might have seen on the Shmee 150 channel, we have a new Shmeemobile, a new, to me at least, Ferrari GTC4Lusso V12. Now, if you've been following my adventure in recent years, wind back about 6 years ago now. Yeah, literally, no, 7 years? Wow, time is flying far too fast. But 6.5 years, we're okay. I bought my first ever Ferrari, which was an FF. Now the FF stood for Ferrari 4. It was the first of the cars of this ilk, with a mid-front V12, hatchback style, shooting brake style car with comfortable back seats, decent luggage, but still driving like a Ferrari. And I loved that car. I did 20-something thousand miles over 2 years or so. I sold it. About a year later, I bought my first one of these, a GTC4Lusso with the V12. They have introduced the turbo V8 as well. So this has the 6.3 litre naturally aspirated V12 lump, which for me is a very big part of it. You can also have the 3.9 litre twin turbo V8, which is a lighter car, a little bit more nimble. It takes away the four-wheel drive system, has pretty much the same amount of power. It's down on horsepower just a touch, but the lighter weight kind of counteracts that. Obviously the smaller engine as well. But I love a V12, and V12s are a dying breed. So I saw this come up for sale recently at my Ferrari dealer, from whom I have purchased the SF90 HRON Ferrari here in London. And I saw the advert, and it took me about 5 seconds to say, yep, we're doing it. So I went down, placed the deposit, and here it is. And today we're going to have a full run through basically of the specification of this car, a bit of an induction tour, talk about how it compares to my previous one, because it's quite a different ethos in the specification. There are a lot of options it doesn't have, but some things I actually prefer about it. And we'll basically, I guess, go over a little bit why I've gone for another one. I think it is going to be the end of an era, really. If you go back in recent times, there was the 456, the FF, the Lusso, that have all been this three-door configuration, two-door configuration, but with back seats. It's a format I love, super comfortable for long-distance drives, really good as well for carrying stuff around, daily driving, but very fast, very exciting, and still a Ferrari at heart. And that's so much of what this is about. So this particular car is in this super smart spec. As you walk around it here, the main body paint is called Blu Pozzi. It's a traditional Ferrari paint. It's a straight, very dark blue, and under different lighting you see it in quite different ways. So how we have it here, for example, you can see it's almost black under the bright lights in the garage, but I really like that. Blue's always been one of my favorite colors. There are lots of blue cars in my collection, but none as dark as this. So I'd love to have it alongside, let's say, the SLS Black series, for example, and we'll see how they compare. But that contrast with the very bright silver wheels. Now there are a few different wheel options for the Lusso. This is, let's say, the V12 design. If you have the V8, it's a slightly different look. You can obviously have these wheels on it. You can have them dual tone, so you can have the sides of the spokes and the inner part of the outside in a darker color, or you can have the full silver finish. I think this contrasts against the navy blue so well, and I'm a big fan of silver wheels, as you probably know from the other cars in my collection. So I love a bright silver wheel. It just means it doesn't get lost. If you have black wheels, you lose them on the tires, and you don't get that design. And I think it's a big part of it. So we've also got the matching silver calipers, an option behind. Again, I think super sharp. We've got the carbon ceramic brakes, standard on every single Ferrari. We've got the Scuderia shields. These are always an option. Some people might say on a super classy spec that you'd want to go without the shields, but for me it's a Ferrari. It's always been a signature thing. I think it should always have them. Now on the exterior, before we dive to the lovely, lovely interior of this, one thing that's really very different about this spec to my previous Lusso is the absence of the external carbon fiber. Now I'm a big carbon fiber guy, so you might question, how am I going for a car without it? But to be honest, on what is effectively my daily for the time being, I'm not too worried about it. I think even with the plastic or satin black painted parts that you do have, you don't lose too much. So on the Lusso, it's a pretty unusual selection of carbon that you can choose to begin with. You can have this front piece onto which the paint is mounted. You can have that in carbon. If we come around towards the side of the car, you could have these louvres in carbon, but on a body paint this dark, you wouldn't really spot that they were carbon because of the slight angling. Even if they are, you wouldn't notice. It would be more of a contrast on a lighter color. You can have the lower side skirt, but again, you don't really notice it. And what you can't have, and this is what's always been so odd as we come round towards this lovely rear end of the Lusso, is you always have this in satin black. You can never have the rear diffuser and bumper section with exposed carbon, which has always been a funny one, but I guess it's such a large piece, it's integrated to the bumper, it would be quite expensive if they did it. But the view from back here is what makes this car for me. Compared to the FF before, it's a significant step ahead. The quad tail lights and quad tail pipes matching up really, really neatly. It squats down when you accelerate. You just see the back of the car clinging to the ground, squatting down and getting ready to launch. You've got the integrated spoiler up over the top, airflow managed through there. And having this light interior, even from here, obviously you can see the rear parcel shelf, just gives it that slightly different look, which I just appreciate about the car. I had a light interior on the FF, which was in crema against the blue Le Mans paintwork. My previous Lusso was a Nero interior with some blue inserts against the TDF blue. Now TDF blue is a really nice color, but it is quite a common Ferrari color. There are lots of cars in that shade, another heritage color. And they launched the Lusso in TDF blue, which meant that a lot of people ordered it. And if you know anything about the cars here in my collection, I don't tend to like launch color schemes. I try and go as out there as possible. So for me, something like this stands out quite a lot. Now you can opt for sports tail pipes. Again, don't really change anything. Here we've got the silver, matches with the wheels, all look super sharp, super nice. One detail I had on my previous Lusso that perhaps I could add is that you could have the Italian Tricolore flag badge on the back. I can't remember if it was on this lip or just below the light, but either way, you'd have that badge on the back. Small extra option you can order. Not sure if I would want to add it or not. Maybe, we'll see, a decision for down the line. Now, all Ferraris, if we open up the boot, Powerfold, have the plaque here. Now, there's a lot to talk about with the plaque mounted on the rear deck. If you have a mid-engine car, this is up front in it, but it tells you the main information, you know, your serial number and your model number and your exterior and interior colors. So Blu Pozzi with Sabbia on the inside, and then you get the full list with the codes of everything that you have in the car, including the mix of different options. So, you know, the center tunnel being in blue medio, we'll have a look at that. The inner leather inserts on the seats in blue Stirling, the Sabbia Alcantara parcel shelf that we've got back here. So those are all options, and there are so many options for a car like this. Cavalinos on the headrest, you name it, because a big thing with the Ferrari V12s is the specs are really high to begin with. So it's about adding more things to make them unique, to make it more special, because let's face it, if you're ordering a car like this new, you probably know that there's going to be heavy depreciation ahead. You're going into it as being in the position to afford that luxury, as I'm sure the one single owner of this car before me did. Now back here, you have a decent amount of space in the car. You can actually fold down, but either just the middle segment or the outer seats, or however you want to do it. You've got a slight step, I think it's the fuel tank that's back in here. But overall, I've always been impressed by how much stuff you can get in, because when you fold the seats flat, you've got a really long floor. It's a big car overall. It comes supplied with this kit. I had the same for my previous car. We've got a lovely red Ferrari cover. We've also got the charger, onto which, of course, we will hook up the car a little bit later on, plug it in just under here, and make sure the battery stays maintained, because after all, it is a big Ferrari. And you also have, I'll just open this up, the seat covers. They come as well with seat covers if you've got your lovely interior and you want to protect it when it goes for service or any work or anything like that. So they come with those, and a steering wheel cover as well in the back here. So that's all. Well, we'll leave it for the moment. I just find it fun. Obviously, when you buy a car like this that's a few years old, you're buying it more on what it looks like as opposed to the exact details of the spec. So we don't have, as I said, the exterior carbon and a couple of other things. But come on round, let me show you the interior in a bit more detail here in the car. Here we go then. And this is a big part of selling the car to me. As you can see, we have this mix of different, well, the light colored Sabbia and the blues around. So the seats and the main door panels, for example, are all in Sabbia, the exact same color as my soon to arrive Ferrari SF90 Stradale. The seats have the inserts. So if you look at those up at the top and down the sides, you have all of those in blue Stirling, the same contrast color I've gone for on the SF90, and you spot the stitching around as well, the contrast stitching on the dashboard and around the central area, for example, and even the Cavallino that you have up on the headrest, the prancing horse, are all stitched in the same blue as well. Now, something slightly unusual about the spec of this car is the central tunnel. which is in blue medio. On camera, it seems to really stand out differently to the other blues inside, but in person, it's a little bit more of a natural fit, if you could say, as opposed to being so dramatically different. But if we fold forwards the seat, the back of the car is finished in exactly the same way. It's a really nice place back there, same level of comfort almost, two effectively bucket seats. You can fit a very tall, well, two very tall passengers back there, or just have one side down for luggage or whatever it might be. And I've always been really impressed by the usability of the car. Things are like the auto folding seats, you know, just the fact that all you do is that. And I know in most premium vehicles, you'd expect that kind of thing. You've got the heated electric memory seats, lumbar support, all of that, all the jazz that you'd like. You've got the devices here that pass the seatbelt to you, that come out forwards and basically feed it to you as the driver to make life easier. Talking of which, we have blue seatbelts, which are also a nice detail on it. And actually, if I pull the seat back so that you can see the floor mats a little bit more closely, we've also got the very nice branded matched GTC4Lusso floor mats down there as well, with the blue stitching. More details that is just really nice. Steering wheel, full carbon fiber, LED driver zone with the shift lights up top. Always feel good. And there are so many details about the Lusso that from driving it for an extended period of time, or driving my previous one for an extended period of time, just make you feel good. It feels like a real Ferrari. It's a big car, but when you're driving it in anger, the whole thing shrinks around you and you feel right at home inside it. I want to come around the other side. We'll come back here in a second, because something I've not actually yet spoken about, well, to do with this registration, SH63 MEE 63 6.3 V8 V12. I was always going to say V8 there. Got too used to saying 62 on my SLS Black Series because 6.2 V8, obviously the Shmee plate. And then inside here, I have my usual bit of fun to put on this car with a bit of a quote. Aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines. Enzo Ferrari. It's, I think, a bit of fun, because if you go back a fair while, it was always for Enzo about making a big, powerful engine, making a car that has a lot of grunt, a lot of go, and this feels exactly that. Now, I did drive my previous Lusso at 200 miles an hour on the de-restricted German Autobahn, and aerodynamics, questionable. As soon as you get to a little corner, it felt very floaty, so definitely don't do that unless you're on a dead straight, is my recommendation. Either way, I think that's quite a nice quote from Enzo, and very apt for this car, very appropriate for it overall. Just all the nice details, and you know, not having the bright coloured upper dash means that you don't get the odd reflections off the windscreen. By having the Nero, this blue stitching I really like around it as well. We've got the JBL upgrade sound system, which always sounds really good, and the significant steps forward they made with the infotainment in the Lusso versus in the FF before, which was always lacking for a car of this class. By the way, the whole roof is a panoramic piece of glass. From the outside, you don't really see because of how tinted it is, but if you look on the inside, it feels very light and airy in here. Even if you're in the back, you've got a great view all around you. So it's just very comfortable. And with my FF, we did a drive with 3 down to all the way to Switzerland from the UK. Even with my Lusso, on a tour I did with my friend Benzine Ben at one point, we actually had 4 people in the car for some stretches, and it was perfect for the purpose. I'm going to pop open the engine though, because a big part of this, as I've said, is what we have up front. Now, we had a quick look at this in the collection video, but Ferrari have been synonymous with V12s since the beginning of time. For me, the SF90 as a mid-engine V8, I would say, is more my era of Ferrari. You know, I got into the car world through the F430, the 458 Italia, then obviously the 488 and F8 Tributo, and now the SF90, and those have always been mid-engine V8 platforms, hence deciding for my first ever new Ferrari to go down the SF90 route. But for this particular car, when we open this up, it's a masterpiece. It's just beautiful to look at. It makes the most amazing symphony of noise. Everything about it, Ferrari just get right. And the positioning is behind the front axle. You know, the front axle sits about here, so you've got the weight of the engine behind, which gives you great dynamics. This car has Ferrari's very trick four-wheel drive system. It's effectively a super lightweight system. They call it 4RM, and what it means is in the lower gears, unless you're absolutely mashing the throttle, you do get some power to the front. If you want to go full speed and do donuts with it on the spot or whatever it is, believe me, you can. Been there, done that, it can do it. But otherwise, just gives you that usability level and is part of an engine bay that is moderately stunning. We also have down here, you can spot the yellow sticker. That is the name badge for the color, Nuovo Blu Pozzi. I think it's Pozzi, like pizza. I hope I've got that right. Sometimes people say Pozzi, I don't know exactly, but the car is full paint protection film from Topaz, who have done all of the Shmuemobiles, of course. And I talked a bit in the collection video, you might spot some bug splats from the previous owner's adventures with the car. We're going to be getting this changed at some point. The dealer actually did offer to cover it before I purchased the car, but given the upcoming trip and the plans, it makes sense to do that down the line. So we're not worrying about it too much. But by having full paint protection film means you don't chip the paint. And with a color like this, I mean, if you come around and just look at it, with a color like this, it's so dark that any mark is going to show very clearly, like very clearly, which is one of the hard things. If you know about cars, black paint or straight black paint is the hardest to keep clean. Haven't made my life easy here, but nonetheless, it looks so good that I suppose I'm not really worrying too much about that at this stage. We'll see if I live to regret this. Anyway, what else do we have? The keys. This is the previous Ferrari key to now. You get the traditional red look. Series of buttons, turn on the headlights, open the tailgate, lock and unlock. And there's even a little storage cubby just inside for putting this. It sits right here in the center console. I'll probably take off the key ring at some point. You've got some storage compartments, cup holder piece you can slide out and over. You've got the central armrest where you've got a few USB ports for things. You know, the usual stuff. Wake it up, runs through the sequence, waves everything at you. I'm going to start it just because why not, foot on the brake. And that's where it's a little bit valved. You can probably hear that. I think we're going to need to do something about it. It's not that complicated to do. Either open the valve or alternatively we will have a switch of some sort. We'll get to that a little bit down the line. Either way, even like this, it sounds amazing. You've got the Manatino to go through your different driving modes. So ice, snow, wet, comfort, sport, or if you're mad, you press and hold and everything turns off, and then it has no problems being a silly toy. Press again, and we're back to silence. You've got some controls down here, by the way, as well, to open the fuel filler cap, the tailgate, and your memory settings. It's just a car that's so beautifully presented, even without like all the trimmings of the carbon. I had some carbon dash trim and this tunnel piece on my previous one. And like I said, it's a really different spec. So also in the options, the rev counter being in silver, it revs up to over 8,000 RPM. Who would think a 4-seat comfortable car with a V12 that revs to over 8,000 RPM? It's basically a perfect combination. It's what I love. Now, I talked a lot on the channel before now about the Ferrari 812, the Superfast, and the GTS, the convertible, which is one of my favorite cars in the world. But the prices of GTSs, which is what I would really love, have held through the roof. I thought they were going to go down, which is why I didn't buy one already. I thought I'd hold on for a little bit, got that wrong, made a mistake, but then nobody really knew where the market was going. And in a way, I feel like I just wanted to get so much back into a V12, but this is a great way to do it because it's also a car I can use, I can drive, I can enjoy, and maybe keep for the longer term in a world where the V12s are quickly going to go away from us. I mean, who really knows what the future has in store? But it's very different now to even when I sold my previous one, and that was only 15 months ago. So it's great to have a Ferrari back in the garage. It's been, as I said, just over a year, and very shortly it's going to be joined by another Ferrari of a very different ilk. If you think about this as a two-car Ferrari garage, a 4-seat V12 front mid, and on the other hand, a 2-seat rear mid V8 turbo hybrid. I think I got all of that right. 1,000 horsepower in the SF90. But this, like I said, it was the spec that sold it for me. Something different from any of the other cars here. I know there are lots of blue cars. I do quite like blue. And the fact that it's just being part of the Ferrari family, and I think they have the most incredible lineup of cars. Lusso, Roma, Portofino M, SF90, F8 Tributo and Spider, 296 GTB. upcoming cars, the SUV, the rumoured Puro Sangue. That's how you pronounce it, by the way, I think. Puro Sangue. It's not Puro Sang. Anyway, that's FUV, Ferrari utility vehicle. That's going to be coming at some point soon. I can't wait to get behind the wheel of a 296 GTB to see what that's like, and obviously to take delivery of my SF90 Stradale. So the intention is to take this, as I said, on a big tour, to go down to Italy to hopefully take delivery of the SF90. We'll see if we can make all of that happen. There are a lot of logistics behind the scenes to do so, but to use the car and do loads of miles with it, to do a lot of miles with it. Not necessarily miles on camera, probably the miles I do when I'm not filming, but to daily drive a Ferrari with a V12. Well, these days are sadly a little bit numbered. But I suppose that's a bit of an induction tour, a spec introduction, walk around of this particular GTC4Lusso, the latest arrival here at the Shmuseum. A fabulous, fabulous car, and just getting back behind the wheel, it instantly felt good again. It felt so familiar. Obviously, I did so many miles between the FF and the Lusso, and imagine how cool it's going to be. This is one of the instigators in this purchase. I wanted to go and do a trip with the SF90. I want to do a big trip with the SF90 all over Europe, thousands of miles, but it doesn't have a lot of luggage space. So I was thinking, what would be the ultimate support car for a road rally in an SF90? You're looking at it. A GTC4Lusso V12. Maybe in the future it will be joined by an 812, maybe it will be superseded by an 812. Who really knows at this stage? Lots of things going on, and changes and movings and makings and whatnot. But I think Blu Pozzi on the GTC4Lusso with the V12 is a very welcome car to have back in the garage. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.